The grand assembly hall of the Galactic Federation hummed with the low-frequency vibrations of 100 different species conversing in their native tongues. Crystalline spires arched overhead, their surfaces reflecting the flickering holographic banners of member worlds. Ambassador Elias Vance adjusted the cuffs of his simple black suit as he waited at the speaking platform, acutely aware of how his human form stood out among the sea of alien regalia. Chancellor Vrox's scaled bulk shifted in the central podium, his forearms folded in what Elias had learned to recognize as impatience. The Zephyrian's vertical pupils narrowed as he addressed the assembly, his voice a condescending rumble that echoed through the chamber. The matter of Earth's petition for a defensive pact is now before the Council. A ripple of clicks and chitters passed through the gathered delegates. Councillor Liss, a Vorac diplomat suspended in her containment field, pulsed with faint bioluminescent patterns. Amusement, Elias noted. Her tendrils drifted lazily as she spoke through the translator orb. A curious request from a species whose largest warship is smaller than our median trade vessel. Elias kept his expression neutral as the holographic display activated above the platform. Earth's fleet appeared, a handful of aging cruisers and patrol frigates, their designs decades behind Federation standards. A few delegates made derisive sounds. One of the insectoid Crixians actually buzzed its wings in what passed for laughter among their kind. "You see our concern," Vrox said, mandibles twitching. "The Vorac swarm consumes entire systems. Your vessels would not survive initial contact." Elias tapped his datapad, bringing up the latest intelligence reports. "With respect, Chancellor, we've analyzed the swarm's attack patterns. Our proposal outlines choke points where—" "Analysis," Liss interrupted, her bioluminescence flashing violet. "Your kind still relies on primitive computational models. The Vorac adapt too quickly for your choke points to matter." A murmur of agreement spread through the chamber. Elias felt his jaw tighten, but forced himself to breathe slowly. He'd expected resistance, but the outright dismissal stung more than he cared to admit. Vrox unfolded his upper arms in a gesture of finality. "The Federation Council has reviewed your petition. The vote was unanimous." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "Your species has not yet earned a place in our strategic considerations." Elias didn't move. He'd rehearsed this moment 100 times, but the reality of it settled cold in his gut. Behind him, the human delegation, a sparse group of aides and junior diplomats, exchanged tense glances. "You're condemning billions to die," Elias said quietly. Vrox's tail twitched. "We are preserving Federation resources for viable defenses. The Vorac will reach your systems in time. Prepare your people as best you can." Liss drifted closer to the containment field's edge, her gelatinous form rippling. "Perhaps your colonies could apply for refugee status, if any survive the initial onslaught." Elias met her gaze evenly. "We won't be applying for anything." He tapped his datapad once more, shutting down the fleet display. The holograms winked out, leaving only the dim glow of the chamber's ambient lighting. As he turned to leave the platform, a gravelly voice spoke up from the observation gallery. Typical human arrogance. Elias glanced up to see Commander Trork, a Zephyrian military liaison, leaning over the railing. His scarred exoskeleton bore the marks of countless battles. "You think your little toys can stop what shattered the Krellian armada?" Elias paused at the base of the steps. "No, Commander, I think we'll need much bigger toys." The chamber fell silent. Even the ever-present hum of translation orbs seemed to quiet. Vrox's spines bristled along his back. "This audience is concluded. Ambassador Vance, you will—" "I know the way out," Elias said. He didn't look back as he walked through the towering doors, the weight of unspoken truths heavy on his shoulders. The last thing he heard before the doors sealed behind him was Liss's soft, mocking pulse. A Vorac's version of laughter. Outside in the transit corridor, his aide, Lieutenant Cho, fell into step beside him. "Sir, the shuttle's ready whenever you—" "Not yet," Elias interrupted. He pulled a secured comm unit from his inner pocket, its surface worn from years of use. A single encrypted channel blinked to life, as he pressed his thumb to the biometric scanner. A voice answered instantly, distorted by layers of encryption. Status. Elias kept walking, his voice barely above a whisper. They said no. A pause. Then, just 2 words. Cold, decisive, and final. Proceed anyway. The channel died. Elias slipped the device back into his pocket as they reached the docking bay through the observation windows. The stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere out there, hidden in the dark, humanity's answer waited. The air in the rusty nebula smelled like burnt engine oil and something vaguely biological. Mara Kessler swirled the amber liquid in her glass, watching the way the dim overhead lights refracted through the synth whiskey. Around her, the bar thrummed with the low growls and clicks of a dozen different species, all nursing drinks and trading secrets in the shadows. Eyolthan slid onto the stool beside her, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence. Grix. Shed dealt with him before useful, if you didn't mind the stench of ammonia clinging to his spindly limbs. You look like someone who's been kicked out of better places, Mara said. Not looking up, Grix's mandibles twitched in what might have been a laugh. And you look like someone who doesn't belong in a dump like this, Captain. Mara smirked. Flattery won't get you a drink. It might get you something better. Grix leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. You heard about the Council's decision? Mara's grip tightened around her glass. Who hasn't? They think we're cannon fodder. Grix's central eye narrowed. They're wrong. He reached into the folds of his tattered cloak and slid a data chip across the counter. It was small, unremarkable. The kind of thing that could get you killed in the wrong company. Mara didn't touch it. What's this? Proof, Grix hissed, that your people aren't as helpless as they pretend. She hesitated, then palmed the chip, activating her wrist projector under the table. The hologram flickered to life, grainy, distorted, but unmistakable. A sensor log from the edge of Sol's Oort cloud. At first, it looked like nothing. Then the shadow moved. It wasn't a planet, it wasn't a comet. The shape was too angular, too deliberate. A silhouette against the stars, massive enough to blot out entire constellations. Mara's breath caught. What the hell is that? Grix's eyes gleamed. That, Captain, is why the Federation should be very, very afraid. She zoomed in. The image resolved just enough to show structures, turrets, docking bays, the faint glow of engines on standby. A ship, no, a fleet, and not just any fleet. The design was unmistakably human. You're telling me we've got a secret armada hiding in our own backyard? Mara's voice was low, dangerous. Grix leaned back, his amusement palpable. Not just hiding, waiting. Mara shut off the projection, her mind racing. If this was real, if Earth had been building warships in the dark while the Federation laughed at their primitive defenses, then the game had just changed. Why show me this? She demanded. Because someone has to warn them, Grix said, and you humans do love your dramatic reveals. Mara downed the rest of her drink, the burn of alcohol doing nothing to steady her nerves. Who else knows? Grix shrugged, a disturbingly fluid motion for a creature with an exoskeleton. The right people, the wrong people, depends on who's paying. She stood, tossing a handful of credits onto the bar. If this is a scam, it'll find you. Grix's laughter followed her out into the corridor. Oh, Captain, the scam is what they've been selling you all along. The station's artificial gravity hummed underfoot as Mara strode toward the docking bay, the data chip burning a hole in her pocket. She had contacts, people who could verify this, people who might already know. Her ship, the Starhawk, sat in its berth, its sleek hull scarred from 100 close calls. The ramp lowered before she reached it. Her AI knew her well. Welcome back, Captain, the ship's voice chimed. You look like you've seen a ghost. Mara slid into the pilot's seat, her fingers dancing across the controls. Wuss, she muttered. I've seen the future. The engines roared to life behind her. The rusty nebula faded into the stations, grime ahead, only stars and secrets. She plugged in the chip. The Starhawk's main screen lit up with the same impossible image. "Plot her course," Mara ordered. "Sol system maximum burn." The AI hesitated. "That's restricted space. Captain, military patrols." "I know." Mara's hands clenched around the controls. "That's exactly where we need to be." The Starhawk shot forward, leaving Zenthis Prime behind. Somewhere out there, hidden in the dark, humanity's real fleet waited, and Mara was going to find it. The transport shuddered as it docked with the Retribution's ventral airlock. Mara Kessler clenched her jaw against the nausea crawling up her throat, not from the rough coupling, but from the sheer impossibility of what she'd seen on that data chip. The airlock hissed open to reveal two armored Marines with pulse rifles slung across their chests. Their black visors gave nothing away. "Captain Kessler," the left one said, voice filtered through his helmet. "Admiral Reeve is waiting." They led her through corridors that shouldn't exist, bulkheads stamped with the United Earth Space Navy emblem, but no ship of this class had ever been commissioned. At least, not publicly. The deck thrummed beneath her boots, the deep vibration of engines far more powerful than anything in the Federation database. The bridge doors slid open with a whisper. Admiral Holden Reeve stood with his back to her, hands clasped behind him as he studied the tactical display floating above the holotable. The projection showed a star map of the Sol system, but layered over it were hundreds of crimson markers, each tagged with names Mara had never heard before. Wezen Roth holding at Elfay, a young Lieutenant Chen, according to her name tag, called out from the comms station. Titan's fist reports cloaking systems nominal. Reeve turned. His steel grey eyes locked onto Mara with the weight of decades. "Captain, I suppose you have questions." Mara's fingers twitched toward where her sidearm should have been. The Marines had taken it. "You could say that." She jerked her chin at the display, starting with what the hell all this is. Lieutenant Chen exchanged a glance with the tactical officer. Reeve didn't blink. Project Aegis, authorized by Earth Defense Command in Fen, after the first Vorac incursion. The hologram zoomed in on the Oort cloud. Dozens of ship markers resolved into sleek, angular dreadnoughts, each larger than a Federation carrier. Mara's stomach dropped. "We don't have the resources for this. We mined the asteroid belt, used automated factories on Pluto's dark side." Reeve tapped a command into the table. The display shifted to show a Vorac hive ship, the same nightmare blob from Grix's chip, beside one of the black-hulled human vessels. Scale bars flashed. The USN ship was bigger. Chen swallowed audibly. "Admiral, if I may, speak freely, Lieutenant. We're looking at over 300 capital ships. The Federation's entire combined fleet is half that." Chen's hands trembled over her console. "How did we hide this?" Reeve's smile didn't reach his eyes. "By letting them think we were weak, by showing them outdated cruisers during their inspections." He turned back to Mara. "You flew Black Ops during the Kuiper Belt skirmishes. You know how Federation scouts patrol." Mara's mouth went dry. She remembered endless drills where human ships played dead, venting fake radiation leaks while Federation observers scoffed. That was all theater. "Necessary theater," Reeve gestured, and the main view screen activated. It showed the Retribution's forward batteries, rows of massive railgun coils humming with pent-up energy. The Vorac 817 species before the Federation even noticed. You think they'd have lifted a finger if we'd asked nicely. Outside the viewport, something vast drifted past. Another ship, its matte black hull swallowing the starlight. Letters 20 meters tall were stenciled near its prow. USN Judgment. Mara's comm buzzed. A priority alert from the sensor chief. "Admiral, we're picking up a Federation distress call. Prelis, Faye, is under attack." Reeve didn't look surprised. "Vorac, confirmed. Multiple hive, ships breaking orbit. Federation defense fleet is, they're getting slaughtered." The bridge lights dimmed as the Retribution's engines powered up. Mara felt the deck plates vibrate through her boots. Around her, officers moved with quiet precision. No panic, no hesitation. Like they'd trained for this moment their entire lives. Reeve straightened his jacket. Signal the fleet. Condition Omega. Alarms blared through the ship. Bulkheads sealed. Mara watched as Chen's fingers flew across her console, relaying orders through encrypted channels. The hologram updated in real time. Dozens. Then hundreds of human ships powering weapons, dropping thermal shrouds, moving into attack formations. All vessels report ready, Chen said. Her voice shook, but her hands were steady. Reeve nodded. Send to Earth command. Operation Midnight is go. He turned to Mara. You wanted to know what this is, Captain. It is insurance. The view screen zoomed in on Krelis. Faye, the planet's once gleaming cities burned under swarms of Vorac drop pods. Federation ships exploded in silent flashes. And today, Reeve said quietly, we cash in. Mara stared at the armada unfolding across the hologram. Names she'd never seen before, ships that shouldn't exist. The weight of it pressed down on her chest. Not fear, but something fiercer. Lieutenant Chen exhaled sharply. Admiral, we're receiving a direct hail from Ambassador Vance. Reeve didn't smile, but something in his stance shifted, like a blade being drawn. Put him through. The screen flickered. Elias Vance's face appeared, his expression grim. Behind him, the Federation Council chamber was in chaos. Hal, the ambassador said. No preamble. No diplomacy. They're here. Reeve's fingers tightened around the edge of the holotable. We know. Vance glanced at something off screen. When he looked back, his eyes burned with cold fury. Show them. The transmission cut for a heartbeat. The bridge was silent. Then Reeve turned to his crew. All ships, advance, full combat readiness. His gaze found Mara's, welcome to the real war, Captain. The Retribution's engines roared to life outside. The stars blurred as the fleet jumped to warp. The alarms screamed across Krelis, Faye's orbital defense grid like dying animals. Commander Trork's 4 hands clenched the command console as the tactical display bloomed with red icons. They came without warning, no declaration, no demands, just the sudden, sickening warp signatures tearing reality apart at the edge of the system. All ships to battle stations. Trork barked, his scales flushing dark crimson. The bridge crew of the ZS Valor scrambled, their appendages flying across holographic controls. Shields to maximum launch interceptors. Outside the viewports, the glittering spires of Krelis, Faye's capital city, reflected the first flashes of orbital fire. The planet's defense fleet. Pride of the Zeperian Navy formed up in perfect diamond formations, sleek silver battleships, each armed with enough plasma lances to glass a continent, turned their prows toward the incoming threat. Then the Vorac arrived. Space itself seemed to bleed as the first bioships emerged, monstrous, pulsating constructs of chitin and writhing tendrils, each larger than a Federation dreadnought. Their surfaces rippled with bioluminescent veins, throbbing in unison like a single, grotesque heartbeat. By the first hatchling, whispered Tactical Officer J-Rix, her antennae trembling. The sensor screen updated, 200 contacts, then 500, then thousands. The first wave hit like a sledgehammer. Vorac swarmers, each the size of a frigate, slammed into the Zeperian picket line at relativistic speeds. Organic torpedoes burst from their bellies, acid-filled sacks rupturing against shields in geysers of corrosive mist. The ZFS Stormbreaker vanished in a silent explosion, its hull dissolving mid-turn. Return fire, Trork roared. Plasma lances carved glowing wounds across the Vorac vanguard, but the creatures didn't bleed. They multiplied, severed limbs twitched and regrew, broken carapaces knitting together before their weapons could cycle for another volley. Then the hive ships arrived. A titanic shape eclipsed Krelis, Faye's sun, its bulk stretching across half the horizon. Spines the length of skyscrapers flexed as it pulsed, ejecting a cloud of spores that darkened the stars. The spores moved, not drifting, but swarming, homing in on Zephyrian vessels like predators scenting blood. "Commander, the Resolute is..." The transmission cut off as the spores reached the battleship. They clung to its hull, burrowing, digesting. Within seconds, the Resolute's proud silver plating turned black, then crumbled like rotten fruit. Escape pods burst from its dying flanks, only to be snatched mid-flight by whip, like appendages. Chalk's hearts pounded. This wasn't war. This was consumption. A new signal pierced the chaos, a psychic scream that bypassed comms entirely, vibrating in the bones of every being on the bridge. The view screen flickered, resolving into a nightmare. The Vorac hive speaker filled the display, a grotesque fusion of flesh and biomechanical augments. Its central maw split vertically, revealing rings of needle, teeth as it spoke without sound. The words appeared in Chalk's mind like acid. "Your flesh will nourish the swarm. Your worlds will feed our children. Target that abomination," Chalk ordered. "Full barrage." Every remaining Zephyrian ship turned their guns toward the hive speaker. Plasma, missiles, and particle beams converged, and dissipated harmlessly against a suddenly visible energy field. The creature's psychic laughter echoed through the bridge. Then the real attack began. The hive ship's spines glowed violet, gathering crackling energy. A beam lanced out, not at the fleet, but at Krelis, Fae itself. It struck the northern continent, and where there had been cities, there was now only a spreading blackness. The planet's atmosphere boiled away in concentric rings. "Report," Chalk demanded, though he already knew. "Planetary shields at Fae." Failing, Jix's voice broke. "Commander, the Valor is the last capital ship remaining." The tactical display confirmed it. 200 Zephyrian vessels reduced to drifting wreckage in under 20 minutes. The Vorac swarms descended toward Krelis Fae's surface, their tendrils already extending toward the population centers. Chalk activated the emergency channel, his voice raw. "Federation High Command. This is Commander Chalk of the ZFS Valor. Krelis, Fae is lost. Repeat. Krelis, Fae is..." A spore cluster impacted the bridge viewport. The transparent alloy cracked, then melted. Chalk had one final glimpse of the hive, speaker's triumphant glare before the psychic scream filled his skull. His last transmission was barely audible over the sound of his own crew dying. "We need static." Across the system, Vorac bioships pulsed in victory. Their tendrils caressed the broken remains of Zephyrian hulls, absorbing, learning. The swarm turned as one toward the next Federation world. No one noticed the faint sensor blip at the edge of the system. A single, silent ship observing everything. The USN Retribution's cloaking field held steady as Captain Kessler watched the annihilation unfold. Her fist clenched around the datapad showing Admiral Reeve's last orders. "Wait for the call." Somewhere behind her, Lieutenant Chen whispered what every human on the bridge was thinking. "My God, we're all that is left." Kessler didn't answer. She just watched the Vorac feast, her fingers hovering over the quantum comlink that would unleash hell. The Grand Assembly Hall trembled as distant explosions echoed through its crystalline walls. Chancellor Vrox's four hands clutched the podium, his scales dull with panic. The holographic displays showed Vorac bioships descending on Krelis, Fae Federation defenses, crumbling like sandcastles against a tsunami. Static-filled distress calls filled the air. Ambassador Elias Vance stood motionless amid the chaos, his black suit untouched by the frantic energy around him. Counselor Liss pulsed frantic colors in her containment field, tendrils slapping against the glass. "You humans," she shrieked. "This is your fault. If you'd shared your defense research." Elias didn't flinch. He tapped his wristcom once. The device beeped, a single green light blinking across the chamber. Zephyrian aides scrambled to reroute power, their mandibles clicking in distress. Vrox turned his massive head, all 6 eyes narrowing. "What are you doing?" Soft skin, your pitiful fleet can't. Watch, Elias said, deep in the Oort cloud. Admiral Holden Reeve's fingers tightened around the armrests of his command chair. The bridge of the USN Retribution hummed with restrained power, every screen displaying the same transmission from Xenthis Prime. Lieutenant Ava Chen's breath caught when the single word appeared on her console. Reeve's voice cracked like a whip. All ships, drop cloak and engage. Space rippled. First near Jupiter's old mining colonies, then in the dead zone beyond Pluto. Finally across 36 strategic points along the Federation border. Reality itself seemed to tear as hundreds of angular black warships materialized from nothing, their hulls swallowing starlight. The USN Wrath emerged so close to a Vorac scout vessel that its gravity wake shattered the organic ship like rotten fruit. On Krellis, Fey Defense Commander Trork staggered as his tactical display suddenly bloomed with new signatures. By the first hatchling. His clawed hands trembled over the controls. The dying Federation fleet had mere minutes of oxygen left when the sky above the burning planet erupted with railgun fire. Streaks of tungsten ripped through Vorac carriers, each impact detonating with nuclear fury. Back in the assembly hall, Elias watched Federation diplomats freeze as the live feed updated. Chancellor Vrox's central arms dropped to his sides. Impossible, he rasped. The holograms now showed human vessels moving with terrifying precision, their formations slicing through the Vorac like a scalpel through flesh. Counselor Liss's bioluminescence flickered uncertainly. Those can't be your ships. Our scanners never detected. We have shipyards in the asteroid belts you deemed worthless, Elias said, stepping forward. His shoes clicked against the polished floor, the sound absurdly loud in the stunned silence. Dockyards hidden in Neptune's storms, foundries on Mercury you ignored because no species could survive the heat. A massive explosion flared on the view screen as the USN Judgment unleashed its plasma lances, bisecting a Vorac hive, ship lengthwise. The organic vessel burst like an overripe melon, spewing half-digested Federation wreckage into the void. Vrox's throat pouch inflated with shock. You built this in secret. For 60 years. Elias didn't smile. Every time your inspectors came calling, we showed them the same dozen outdated cruisers. Let you laugh at our primitive technology. He gestured to the screen where the Titan's fist was now powering up its gravity lance. While you were busy mocking us, we were building gods. The chamber's main display zoomed in on the Titan's fist as its central weapon array began glowing violet. Space distorted around it, light bending like taffy. When it fired, the beam didn't travel. It simply erased the distance between itself and its target. A Vorac command ship the size of a small moon folded in on itself, compressed into a singularity that swallowed 6 nearby bioships before winking out. Federation aides screamed. 2 Zephyrian delegates fainted, their exoskeletons clattering against the floor. Vrox staggered back, all 4 arms raised offensively as if the display might reach out and crush him too. Elias adjusted his cufflinks. You wanted proof we could fight the Vorac. He nodded toward the carnage unfolding across a dozen star systems. Here it is. Alarms blared as secondary displays showed human fleets engaging at 7 more border worlds, not just defending, advancing. Lieutenant Chen's voice crackled through Elias's wristcom, loud enough for the entire chamber to hear. Admiral Reeves reports all sectors secured awaiting orders. Rox's mandibles worked soundlessly. Behind him, a junior aide vomited blue fluid across the polished floor. Counselor Liss had collapsed into a quivering mound at the bottom of her tank, her bioluminescence reduced to faint, panicked flickers. Elias took a single step toward the podium. Every alien in the chamber flinched. Now, he said softly, let's discuss terms. Outside the observation windows, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath as human warships took up defensive positions around Xenthis Prime. Their weapons remained active, their shields stayed raised. Not a single vessel requested docking clearance. The message was clear. This wasn't a rescue, it was a reckoning. The void above Krellis, Faye burned. Captain Mara Kessler's fingers danced across her fighter's controls, the Retribution's fighter bay already a distant memory behind her. Her squadron's engines left blue trails in the debris, filled darkness as they weaved between the wreckage of Federation ships. The Vorac had torn through them like paper. "All wings form up on me," Mara barked into the comm. "Watch for those tendrils. They'll grab anything that gets too close." A chorus of affirmatives crackled back. Behind her, the massive bulk of the USN Titan's fist loomed like a steel god, its weapon ports glowing with pent-up energy. The rest of Project Aegis Fleet moved in perfect formation, their black hulls swallowing the starlight. On the bridge of the Retribution, Admiral Reeve watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The Vorac swarm had paused their assault on the planet below, their hive ships turning as one to face the new threat. "Admiral," Lieutenant Chen said, her voice tight. "They're reconfiguring, I think." "I know what they're doing," Reeve interrupted. "They're calling for reinforcements." He tapped a command into his console. "All ships, execute Omega pattern, gravity lance primed." "Charged and ready, sir," a weapons officer confirmed. Reeve allowed himself a small, grim smile. "Then let's show them why they should have feared us from the start." In the ruins of Krellis V's orbital defense grid, Commander Trork clutched the edges of his shattered command chair. His remaining crew, what few hadn't been liquefied by Vorac bioplasma, stared at the view screen in disbelief. The human ships moved unlike anything he'd ever seen. No ponderous turns, no clumsy broadsides. They struck like vipers, their railgun salvos punching through Vorac armor with terrifying precision. "Sir," his sensor officer croaked, the lead human vessel, its energy signature, Trork's crest flattened against his skull. As the Titan's fist unleashed its gravity lance, space itself screamed. The beam wasn't light or plasma. It was a twisting helix of distorted reality, a spear of fractured physics that struck the nearest Vorac hive ship dead center. For one terrible second, nothing happened. Then the hive ship's outer layers collapsed inward, its long frame crumpling like paper in a fist. The implosion rippled outward, consuming 3 nearby escorts in a chain reaction of folded space-time. Trork's jaw hung open. No species had ever damaged a hive ship before. The humans had just obliterated one with a single shot. On the Retribution's bridge, Reeve watched the destruction with clinical detachment. "Reload the lance. Target the next hive ship." "Admiral," Chen said suddenly, "we're being hailed. Federation frequency." Reeve sighed. "Put it through." The hologram of Chancellor Vrox flickered to life, his scales dull with shock. Behind him, the Federation Council chamber was in chaos. "Admiral Reeve," Vrox managed, his voice uncharacteristically small. You hid this for decades." Reeve didn't blink. "We knew you'd never believe us if we told you, so we built and we waited." Vrox's 4 hands trembled. "The gravity lance, your fleet's coordination. This isn't just new technology, this is practice," Reeve finished. "The Vorac aren't the first predators to come knocking." "Just the first you noticed." He turned back to the view screen as another hive ship detonated under concentrated railgun fire. "Now if you'll excuse me, Chancellor, we have a swarm to exterminate." Mara's fighter shuddered as a Vorac bio. Missile detonated too close. Warning lights flared across her console. "Kessler, you've got 2 on your tail," her wingman shouted. "I see them." Mara yanked her stick hard left, her G-suit compressing as she pulled a maneuver that would have liquefied any alien pilot. The pursuing Vorac fighters, living ships of chitin and pulsating muscle, overshot wildly. Mara smiled. "Thanks for the opening, boys." Her missiles found their marks. Twin explosions painted the void behind her. "All squadrons," Admiral Reeve's voice came through the comm, "fall back to the Titan's fist's shadow. We're going to end this." Mara didn't need to ask how. She'd seen the gravity lance's test footage. The thought of firing it in a live combat situation sent a thrill down her spine. As her fighter banked toward the safety of the human fleet, she caught a glimpse of the surviving Federation ships. They hung motionless at the edge of the battle, their weapons silent, their crews no doubt watching in stunned disbelief as the species they dismissed as primitive tore through the galaxy's most feared threat, like a storm through dry grass. Retribution actual to all vessels, Reeve announced. Final lance firing solution locked. Say goodbye to their command ship. Space twisted, light bent. The largest remaining Vorac hive ship, a monstrosity nearly 30 kilometers long, simply ceased to exist in a silent flash of tortured physics. On the Retribution's bridge, Lieutenant Chen let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Sir, the remaining Vorac ships, they're running. Reeve finished. He allowed himself a small, satisfied nod. Good. Let them tell the rest what happens when you threaten humanity. In the ruins of Krelis, Fate's command center, Trork slowly released his death grip on the chair. The view screen showed the last of the Vorac fleet fleeing into FTL, pursued by human fighters that moved like shadows given form. His second in command, a young Zephyrian barely out of the academy, turned to him with wide eyes. Commander, what do we do now? Trork stared at the screen, at the impossible black ships now turning their attention toward the battered Federation vessels. We wait, he said quietly, and we pray they still consider us allies. Outside, the human fleet regrouped, their weapons still humming with barely restrained power. They made no move to leave. The message was clear. The galaxy had changed. The chamber was silent. Not the quiet of contemplation, but the stunned hush of predators realizing they were no longer at the top of the food chain. Elias Vance let the silence stretch, his polished shoes clicking against the crystalline floor as he approached the Federation Council's central dais. The same platform where, mere weeks ago, Chancellor Vrox had dismissed humanity with a flick of his scaled wrist. Now, Vrox's forearms trembled where they gripped the edge of his seat. Councillor Liss's bioluminescent patterns flickered erratically, her containment field rippling with distress. The other delegates, representatives of species that had ruled the galactic arm for millennia, couldn't tear their eyes from the holographic displays floating above them. Human warships, hundreds of them, holding formation above Krelis, fey-like avenging angels. Elias placed the datapad on the table with deliberate slowness. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the dead air. You'll find our terms quite reasonable, he said. His voice carried no malice. Only the calm certainty of a man holding all the cards. Earth assumes command of the Federation's eastern defensive perimeter, full tactical autonomy, shared intelligence networks. And he tapped the pad, bringing up a new schematic. A permanent seat on the High Council. Vrox's mandibles twitched. This is surrender. Elias finished for him. No, this is reality adjusting to new facts. He gestured to the displays. While you were debating protocol, we were building while you dismissed us as primitive. We were preparing, and when the Vorac came, he let the implication hang. A low chittering filled the chamber as the delegates communicated in their various tongues. Elias didn't rush them. He'd waited decades for this moment. What were a few more minutes? Finally, Councillor Liss pulsed a pale blue, the Vorac equivalent of a sigh. Your terms are acceptable. The words seemed to pain her. But know this, Ambassador. You have changed the balance of power in ways you cannot yet comprehend. Elias smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Oh, I comprehend perfectly. He turned to leave, then paused at the chamber's arched entrance. One more thing. The next time the Federation considers ignoring humanity. He didn't finish the threat, he didn't need to. Outside, the orbital platforms hummed with activity. Repair crews swarmed over damaged Federation vessels, while pristine human battleships stood watch. On a nearby view screen, the USN Titan's fist dominated the feed, its gravity lance ports still glowing from the battle. Captain Mara Kessler fell into step beside Elias as he walked toward the docking bays. They took it better than I expected, she remarked, nodding back toward the council chamber. Elias chuckled. Shock does wonders for diplomacy. He He glanced at her. Reeve wants you on the Retribution's bridge by Faye. There is talk of pushing into Vorac territory. Mara's grin was all teeth. About damn time. They passed a group of Superior soldiers huddled around a news terminal. The footage showed human medics treating wounded Federation troops, our armored figures moving gently among the aliens who'd once called us weak. One of the soldiers noticed Elias and stiffened. After a moment's hesitation, he raised a clawed hand in salute. Elias returned the gesture, not as a subordinate to a superior, as one warrior to another. The docking bay doors hissed open, revealing the sleek lines of Elias's diplomatic shuttle. Beyond it, through the observation windows, the stars burned cold and bright. And among them, hidden no longer, the might of Earth stood ready. Think they'll keep their word? Mara asked as they boarded. Elias settled into his seat, the shuttle's systems humming to life around them. Doesn't matter, he said. We're not asking permission anymore. The engines roared, and the shuttle leapt forward, carrying them back to a fleet, to a people, to a future where humanity would never again be overlooked. Somewhere in the dark, the Vorac swarm stirred, and for the first time in their millennia of conquest, they hesitated.